Tansi everybody, Shawn McDonald here, the Metis Man. Welcome to my YouTube channel. We're currently filming here in Edmonton, Alberta, which is on the traditional lands of Treaty 6 and Region 4 of the Métis Nation.
You grew up in a Métis settlement.
Yes.
Back in the 70s, right?
Yes.
And now the settlements in the 1990s, they went through this infrastructure with the Accord.
Yeah.
With gas, oil, and water, power. But back in the 70s, there was none of that. You were raised with outhouses,
Yes.
slop pails,
Yeah.
water pails for drinking
Exactly.
water with a dipper and a pitcher. You were raised with wood,
Yes.
old stoves, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, kind of teach the kids of nowadays where you've come from.
Exactly.
Your lifestyle from today, how it's changed from back then, right?
Yeah. That's a good question we have from the member of the audience here. To talk about my background and how I was born and raised. My bloodlines come from Hobima and from Saddle Lake through Steinhauers and that. And my mush and my grandpa, he was in residential schools growing up. And he was beaten, he ran away, he was beaten again. And even though after all that was put behind him, he fought for this country in World War I. He was shot and wounded, shot in the leg and sent home. He was in the cavalry back then, riding on a horse, fighting for this country. He moved my family then. My dad was just a baby, I think he was maybe not even a year old when he moved to the settlement. So he did that, and then my dad and his brothers, there was 4 brothers, they started like a little bucking rodeo stock and that, so they had the 4B brand, the 4 brothers. They did logging back then, and then my dad turned to oil and gas through the local Union 92, I think it is, Labor's Union here in Edmonton. So back then I remember growing up, we never had running water till I was 10 years old. Never had power till I was about 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old. So all of a sudden, my dad turned to oil and gas. He started working in that industry. I can slowly see things change. We went from having no TV to having a black and white TV. I always joke about how the first time I seen the Dukes of Hazzard, well, how many times, I always thought the General Lee was gray. I was surprised to see it orange on a color TV. So yeah, we had humble beginnings, but I didn't know no difference. I didn't think we were poor. But then all of a sudden we had new bicycles. Dad come back one day, I remember, with a brand new motorbike. He was riding it in the field, and beside my mom went her horse, and she got bucked off. So next day, the motorbike was traded in for a boat. Mom said, get rid of that thing. But yeah, so I was, I guess you can say, raised out of poverty because of oil and gas through my dad and his hard work, helping to build the projects up in Fort McMurray with Syncrude and Suncor and Bechtel days. And I myself continue that on by starting my business. And now my boys are 3rd generation into the industry as well. And hopefully they take the reins over my business when I'm done and hand it over to them and they continue on. But definitely the industry itself, it changed a lot of Métis and First Nations people. And the reason why I say that, our people, we're a bush people. So that's why we thrive so big in the industry, because we're a bush people and that industry is primarily in the bush. We got the best laborers, the best slashers, the best equipment operators, all of that. I stand by that, and I really brag that up when it comes to this industry. So that's why I really push to fight for the industry, because we benefit lots from it. And it's a two-way street, so what benefits the end industry benefits our people as well. As long as the industry plays with us in our sandbox, then all is good.
When was the first time you ever went hunting?
Ooh, I probably don't even remember. I was so young with my dad. We go hunting lots. I do have a nice picture of me and my dad with a buck that we shot. I was actually quite old. I was probably about 17. So, but yeah, I started very, very young with my dad. He was a very full-fledged avid hunter. Yeah, and not the trophy hunter either. Yeah.
How has the land specifically that you grew up on, changed during your lifetime?
The land most definitely has changed. The water levels have dropped. There is less wildlife around. I think they just migrate away, and I don't blame it strictly on oil and gas. I know it does its role as well. I'm not going to deny that. But it's it's humanity that, where we live and grow, the animals are thrown out and kind of pushed away from their sources, right? So, and the water levels, I say, have dropped, but I think that's natural evolution, not due to oil and gas. I bring people down to my river campsite, and I see, you see how narrow the river is here? They said, yeah. I said, now you look up half a mile each way, you can see ancient river banks. So it's an ancient riverbed, so that's from millions of years ago. There was no oil and gas consumption back then, but yet the water receded a mile down to now just little creeks. So natural evolution.
Who are First Nations people, and if you can explain FNMI, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit?
Oh yeah, Section 35. Yeah, that's consists of the Métis, the First Nations, and the Inuit. We're first peoples of this land. Unless you're Métis, then like me, and you're mixed. But the way I grew up, I don't know the other way of the fence, the other side of my life. All I know is the Métis way. Born and raised on Kikino Métis settlement. That's all I've known, right? But with Section 35, it's just distinct peoples of the first lands of this country, of this Turtle Island, as we call it, right? So, yeah.
Do you know how long First Nations have been in Canada?
How long they've been in Canada? Before Canada was Canada, for millennia. So since the beginning of time, or since there was humans running around, I think that's how long we've been here, right? Yes.
What is a First Nations band?
What is a First Nations band? It's just kind of like a tribe on different reserves that were set aside for the people, right? So there's different bands for every different reserve. That was formed back in the 1700s, 1800s.
Yeah. Can you explain what the Indian Act is?
The Indian Act is kind of like a charter of rights for Indigenous people, but there's not too many rights for First Nations in there. To me, I think it has to be rewritten. I think it's got to be destroyed and rewritten because it's so archaic. It doesn't fit in this time and age, and it has to go and it has to be rewritten. To me, it's holding us back.
Diana wants to know, do you bead?
Do I bead? No, I do not bead. I think beading is beautiful. I actually don't know many males, if any at all, that do bead, but a lot of females. It's beautiful artwork, and to me, I don't have the patience to do something like that.
It does take a lot of patience.
Yes.
Taylor wants to know, best place to hunt around Lakeland, best hunting spots, or Lac La Biche?
For myself, I primarily hunt on the Kikino Métis settlement, so I've been there all my life. To me, that's the best place. I'm sure there's other ones too, like Crown Land or the other settlements or reserves. But for myself, I hunt primarily on my home settlement of Kikino.
In more recent years, especially this year, I've heard more people communicate that, saying that you're using terminology like native or Aboriginal is not proper terms, and we're trying to use more language like Indigenous. So can you explain the value and importance of terminology?
You might get the wrong answer or not the right answer from me, but I do not like the term Indigenous. I do use it because of some of the organizations I'm associated with. It's in the terminology, but I myself do not like being called Indigenous. Many don't, and many get offended when I do say that. Many of the First Nations and Métis get offended by that. But to me, that's the flavor of the month. It actually came from the United Nations, is where that word come from. To me, native is you're native to your homeland. Indigenous, like the government themselves, they say they brag they spend, I think, $24 billion or $28 billion a year on Indigenous people in Canada. But yet, in the fine print, Indigenous people, it encompasses even the immigrants that are coming into our country, Indigenous to their country, but they're still capped in with us on our own homeland. So that's why I do not like that terminology. It actually is in favor for the government to use that, not for us. I've been called Métis, half-breed, native, all of that.
Do you prefer baked bannock or do you prefer fry bread, if you can choose?
If I can choose, it would be fry bread by far, probably. I do like them both, depending on what I'm eating. I am kind of gluten intolerant now, so I only eat it occasionally, like 2-3 times a year. I call it falling off the wagon. I don't drink, so I fall off the wagon with gluten and bannocks, right? So definitely fry bread by far.
Do you bake bannock or make bannock?
Yes, I do.
yourself?
I actually bake it and I fry it myself. And I'm proud to say I'm actually not bad at it. They're not hockey pucks anymore, like when I started about 10 years ago. But they're actually pretty good.
Who's your favorite?
Actually, I'd have to say for fried bannock, it was my late Auntie Mary Jane. She made the best fried bannock around. And for baked bannock, I would have to say my mom. She is white. She's not Métis. She's not native, but she grew up, of course, being married to my dad, and she was taught how to make it, and she makes it really, really well.
How many Métis people speak Michif?
Michif, not too much now. Our elders are slowly passing away, and even back in my family's roots with my dad and that, they were taught in their youth not to speak their language. You know, they was try to get beaten out of the, you know, our older siblings, our older generations, right? So back to residential schools and that, they were taught, you talk that, you'll get beaten, right? So they tried to protect their kids like us by not speaking that language around us. Again, very shameful again, what the Canadian government did to our people, right? So it's a dying language, but it's slowly getting revised, and I'd like to see more youth attending more classes and learning stuff online with the apps that are available in that, and hopefully we can save our language and not lose our language.
We'll only have a few more questions.
Sure.
Do you know the Métis population in Canada?
No, that's a good question, actually. I know the Métis Nation, they say they have about 50,000 members. And with the settlements, I think the settlements average probably about 600 to 800 per settlement kind of thing. And that's the ones that are not self-disclosed as Métis. So I'm sure there's many, many more that are not self-disclosed. And that's just in Alberta alone, so I couldn't imagine what Canada would have for a population, but I'm sure there's many.
Are there only 8 settlements currently in Alberta and all of Canada?
Yes, only 8 settlements, and they're only in Alberta. There's never been a settlement outside of Alberta.
True or false? If you do not have a settlement that you are directly from, does that mean you're not Métis?
No, it does not. No, not everybody had the rights or the family that settled back then in the settlements, right? So to me, you're not any less of a native or a Métis just because you don't belong to one. There's many that do want to belong, and it's not their choice the way they're not belonging to one, so they shouldn't be affected that way. To me, a Métis is Métis.
So Diana wants to know, where is the best spot to snag an uncle?
The snag an uncle, I know which Diana that is. Back in Lac-La-Biche, back in the day, I would say truckers, but that's no longer there. She's probably referring to me. So there's one right here that's snaggable, but Diana, I'm sorry I can't help you out. I don't really look for uncles, I only look for aunties. So.
What is your most commonly used Cree words?
That I use is mostly Tansi. Hello, how are you, right? Just to start that off. A lot of elders see me and they don't know me if they don't know me, and I start speaking Cree and I tell them that. Well, they just lighten up and the smile comes on their face and they start talking Cree. Then they start talking too much Cree, then I can't understand it all. So I only know a little bit of sis, not too much of it, but I get by.
Can you teach your viewers right now a Cree word they can easily learn?
Well, going back to Tansi, hello, how are you? That's the most important one. Tande Tuten, where you from? One common slang is ask you where you from. You say, use your lips to point. So many do that. So you do that, you'll fit right in.
So just people who are watching right now, it could be people who don't identify and who
Right.
do, but they just want to learn more about their culture, or yeah, it could be anything in regards to like political spectrum, just our culture,
Yep.
a neat thing, or yeah, anything.
I would say don't let your culture die. Like, don't let it die. Being native, I can see, like, when the elders go, I always speak about how the Munyao, the white people, they passed their history on through history books. You know, even back in the day, the caveman, the writings on the wall kind of thing. But with us, with First Nations and Métis and all that, our heritage is passed down from generation to generation through storytelling. So that's why I love to do this channel and talk to elders and that. So their elders are passing away. We're losing our history through that. So sit down with an elder, listen to the stories, write it down, video it, record it, capture it and live it. Go out and walk in the bush and be one with the land. Go hunting, go berry picking, go whatever, and keep our heritage going and all their traditions. Medicine, go into the bush. I've learned through my healing process I've been through the past couple of years. I'm turning more to the bush for medicine instead of the stuff you can buy over the counter or get prescribed. To me, that was holding me back and did more damage than any good. So hold on to our past and bring it into the future. We can't lose it, just like a religion. We can't lose all that. Once we do, then we're done. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you like this video, like and subscribe and share. And we'll see you next time. Examaga, hi hi. To go. I never even read the question, so I don't know what. I forgot to sing. You want me to sing now?
You should sing your intro. Just
Sing
try.
my intro?
Just try.
I was born a Métis, born on Métis land.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everybody, from the Metis Man.